I never thought I'd be the guy telling this kind of story, but here I am. It all started on what was supposed to be a relaxing vacation. My wife, Lisa, and I had planned this trip for months, an escape to a secluded beach house, just the two of us. No work, no kids, no distractions. We needed this. Or so I thought. From the moment we arrived, things felt off. Lisa was unusually quiet during the drive, her fingers tapping nervously on her knee. She kept glancing at her phone, hiding it every time I looked over. I shrugged it off, telling myself maybe she was just tired or anxious about the trip. But something in her eyes didn't sit right. The first red flag was small but noticeable. She'd been acting distant since we got there. I caught her once in the bathroom, rummaging through her bag in a hurry, then quickly closing it when I knocked. I asked her what she was doing and she brushed it off with a laugh. "Nothing, just some makeup stuff, you know me," she said, but her voice was unconvincing. The second was her phone. She kept it close more than usual. I saw her texting late at night, hiding her screen when I entered the room. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was talking to a friend or a coworker. But then one night I overheard her talking softly in the bathroom, her voice strained. I caught a snippet of what she said, something about not being able to keep this secret much longer. My stomach clenched. That hit me hard, but I pushed it aside. Maybe she was just stressed. The real shock came when I finally decided to check her suitcase. I'd been feeling uneasy, like a prickling at the back of my neck. I waited until she was in the shower, then slowly, I opened her bag. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst out of my chest. I was just looking for some makeup or maybe a misplaced shirt, but what I found made my blood run cold. At the very bottom of her suitcase, tucked between a pair of shoes, there was a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it carefully, trying not to make a sound. It was a series of messages, texts, really. I read the first one: "Can't wait to see you tonight, it's been too long." Another one: "Your secret is safe with me, but I need to see you soon." My hands trembled. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. They weren't just friendly messages. They were heated, intimate. And they were from her to someone I didn't know until I looked closer. The last message was from her, about a location, a hotel nearby. My wife was cheating on me. She was pregnant, and I only knew because I saw the ultrasound appointment in her purse. She'd been hiding all of it, lying right in my face. My mind spun. How long had she been doing this? Who was the guy? I couldn't believe what I was reading. It wasn't just a fling, it was something deeper. Her pregnancy was a lie, the whole thing a betrayal. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. My hands clenched into fists. My stomach twisted painfully, like I'd swallowed a stone. I sat there on the bed, clutching those messages, trying to breathe through the chaos inside me. I had to get out, but I didn't want to do anything rash. Yet the anger simmered. I knew I had to come up with a plan, an ending she wouldn't see coming. As I stared at those words, I realized the truth. My wife wasn't just cheating. She was orchestrating a life-altering lie, and I was just now finding out. The betrayal cut so deep it made me feel physically sick. But I also knew this was just the beginning. If I wanted justice, I'd have to do something she wouldn't expect. That's when I started to think about revenge, not in the way movies do, but a calculated move to make her regret everything. The next morning, I woke up with a plan forming in my mind. I'd confront her, yes, but there was more to it. She thought she'd blindsided me with her deception, but I was already planning my move. I was done playing nice. The game was on, and she was going to regret ever crossing me. I just had to keep my cool until I had all the pieces in place. I looked out at the ocean through the window, the waves crashing relentlessly against the shore. I could feel the weight of betrayal pressing down on me, but also a strange sense of clarity. If I was going to do this, I'd do it right. No messy shouting, no tears, just a calm, decisive ending. That's what she'd least expect. And so I sat there, heart pounding, knowing that everything was about to change. I spent the next few hours trying to stay calm, but every time I closed my eyes, the images flashed back. Her messages, her lying face, the ultrasound photo she'd hidden in her purse. It was like a punch to the gut every time. I knew I couldn't just sit on this and do nothing. I had to think, plan, and make sure I executed this right. While she was still asleep, I went through her phone again just to double-check what I'd seen. Her messages with the guy, nothing explicit, but enough to confirm what I'd suspected. They exchanged photos, plans to meet, even talk about faking her pregnancy to throw me off. That last part made my stomach churn in a different way. She'd been dishonest about everything from the start. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want her to see me coming with a plan. I needed her to think she was still in control, so I kept quiet during breakfast. She was acting normal, maybe a little too normal, like she was trying to cover her tracks. I watched her carefully, feeling the fire build inside me. Finally, I decided today was going to be the day I called her out. I waited until she was in the shower, then slipped out of the house. I had already scoped the area, knowing her phone number, where she'd be, and what I wanted to say. I had to be precise, cold, and firm. No room for her to wiggle out of it. I drove to a nearby coffee shop and sat there, pretending to be calm. When she called me later, I answered with a steady voice. "Hey Lisa, can we talk? I want to understand what's going on." The silence on her end was enough. She hesitated, then agreed. I told her I knew about the messages, about the other guy, about the ultrasound. Her voice cracked, but she tried to deny everything. "You're mistaken," she said. "It's not what it looks like." I almost laughed. "Really? Because I saw the text, Lisa, I saw the ultrasound. I know you've been lying to my face." Her silence confirmed everything I needed to hear. That's when I threw the grenade. "We need to talk about what's next, because I've made up my mind. I want to see the truth, and I want you to tell me everything now." I knew this was just the beginning, but I wanted to hear her admit it, see her crumble. She started crying then, tears streaming down her face, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was scared, okay? I thought I'd fix everything before you found out. The guy, he's just someone I met. The pregnancy, it's not real. I was going to tell you, I swear." Her words sounded rehearsed, but I didn't buy it, not anymore. "You lied about everything. You lied about the pregnancy, about us, about your entire life," I said. "You thought you could keep this a secret forever, but I know the truth now, and I know what I'm going to do." I paused, letting her hear the weight of my words. "This ends today." The line went dead after that. I sat back, feeling the adrenaline course through my veins. It was time for the final move. I had decided that she'd regret betraying me the way she did, by losing everything she thought she had. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to make sure she paid a price she wouldn't forget. I went back to the house and waited. When she returned, I was ready. Her face told me she knew I'd found out, but she didn't know how far I was willing to go. I was calm, too calm, as I blocked her at the door and looked her straight in the eyes. "I know everything, Lisa, and I mean everything," I said, voice steady but cold. "You've been sleeping with my best friend, lying about my child, and thinking you'd get away with it. Well, not anymore." Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "You don't get to explain. You already did. You lied, you cheated, and you betrayed everything we had." I paused, feeling the weight of the moment. "So here's what's going to happen. You're leaving. You're packing your stuff and you're gone by tonight. Don't come back." She begged, of course. Tears, apologies, promises to change, all the usual. But I wasn't buying it, not this time. I handed her a bag, told her to take what she wanted, and watched her stumble out the door, her face streaked with tears. That was the last time I saw her. The house felt colder after she left, emptier somehow. But I knew I'd done what I had to do. Her lies had shattered everything, and now I was free from her treachery. I sat down on the empty sofa, took a deep breath, and stared out at the ocean. The waves kept crashing, relentless, just like my resolve. I realized something then. Betrayal like this doesn't just hurt, it changes everything. And if I was going to survive this, I'd need to rebuild, stronger than before. But first, I'd make her regret the day she ever crossed me. That much I knew for sure. Do you want me to go on with the next part? After she was gone, I sat there in the silence, feeling an odd mix of relief and emptiness. The house was dead silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant crashing of waves. The betrayal had hit me like a freight train, but I knew I couldn't just let it end there. No, I needed to turn this into something she'd regret forever. I had to plan my revenge carefully, methodically. For the first few days, I kept to myself, pretending everything was normal while secretly gathering my thoughts. I knew her phone was still a weapon, so I had to get access to it. I couldn't risk her deleting messages or taking away evidence. I waited until she left to go to a friend's house. Then I slipped into her room and unlocked her phone. using a code I'd memorized from a suspicious note she had written down. I didn't want to do anything impulsively, but I also knew I had to be prepared. Once I had her phone, I immediately started digging through her messages. I wasn't just looking for more proof. I was searching for weaknesses, patterns, things I could use. I found endless exchanges with the guy, more than I'd seen before, talking about meetings, faking the pregnancy, and making plans to disappear together. I also noticed she'd been secretly withdrawing money from our joint account, probably to fund this new life. Every detail added fuel to my fire. The more I learned, the more I realized I had to go beyond just confrontation. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her lies, to understand just how badly she'd screwed me over. That's when the plan took shape. I would expose her, but not just to her. I wanted to make her lose everything: her reputation, her credibility, her sense of control. I started to set up my revenge in my mind step by step. First, I'd leak the messages to her closest friends. Not all at once, just enough to make her reputation crumble. She'd portrayed herself as a loving, devoted wife. Now everyone would see her for what she truly was. I knew her social circle, people who trusted her, who admired her, would turn their backs quickly once the truth was out. Next, I'd take the evidence a step further. I'd make sure her family knew. Not just her friends, but her parents, her siblings. I'd find a way to send them the messages, the ultrasound picture, the plans she'd been hiding. I wanted her to face the shame she deserved. The last part was personal. I'd make sure she'd regret ever walking into my life. I started to think about what would hurt her most: her reputation, her pride, or her future. I decided I'd contact the guy, tell him I knew everything and that I'd be watching him. If she thought she was sneaking around behind my back, I'd make sure they both felt the consequences. I wasn't interested in just losing her. I wanted her to suffer the way she made me suffer. I also knew I had to keep my emotions in check. If she saw I was angry or vengeful, she'd fight back, try to twist things around. No, I had to stay calm, calculated, cold. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension in my chest, and told myself this was the only way I'd get closure. One night, I made a decision. I'd send the messages and evidence to her entire social network anonymously. I wanted her to see her carefully constructed life unravel in a matter of hours. I had already drafted the emails, blurred out personal details I didn't want to reveal outright, but enough to make everyone see the truth. I was going to give her the gift of her own exposure. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I hit send. The moment was right. I knew it would change everything. I imagined her waking up to her phone flooded with reactions, her friends calling her, her family confronting her. That was the point of no return. As I sat back, waiting for the fallout, I realized I'd finally taken control. She thought she'd betrayed me and gotten away with it, but I was about to turn everything on its head. I'd make sure she'd never forget what she did, and that she'd regret ever crossing me. That night, I lay awake, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction mixed with annoying anticipation. I knew this was just the beginning. The moment her world crumbled would be the sweetest revenge of all. Would you like me to continue with the next part? The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. The adrenaline from yesterday's plan still buzzed in my ears, but I knew I had to act quickly. I had sent out the anonymous emails last night, proof, screenshots, the ultrasound, everything. Now I waited to see how would all unfold. It was like sitting on the edge of a cliff, staring down, knowing one false move could send her spinning. By mid-morning, I started getting texts from her friends. One by one, the messages came in. Shock, disbelief, anger. I could almost hear the gasp in every reply. "Did you see this? Is this really Lisa?" The gossip spread fast like wildfire. I kept my phone closed, watching the chaos I'd unleashed. Then her phone rang. I saw her name pop up on the screen. I didn't answer. Instead, I waited, knowing she'd be confused and frantic. She panic-called her best friend, Emma, who was quick to react. I overheard the conversation from the living room, her voice trembling. "Emma, I don't know what's happening. Did you see the emails? Who sent them? Someone blackmailing me." Her words sounded panicked, but I knew she was just starting to realize her carefully built house of cards was collapsing. I didn't say a word. I just watched her squirm, feeling every bit of her anxiety. A few hours later, her family got involved. Her mother called her, voice sharp and accusing. "Lisa, I saw what's going around. Is it true? Are you really pregnant by another man?" I could hear Lisa trying to deny it, but her voice cracked under the pressure. Her mother was furious. That was what I wanted, her closest circle turning on her, witnessing her betrayal firsthand. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet, playing it cool. I didn't want to tip my hand. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, maybe even come up with a lie to explain everything. But I also knew she would realize she'd lost her grip. The evidence was irrefutable, and it was only a matter of time before she hit her breaking point. At some point, she stormed into the living room, her face streaked with tears. "You did this," she spat, eyes wild. "You ruined everything. Why are you doing this to me?" Her hands trembled as she looked at me, desperate. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Because you lied, you cheated, and you betrayed everything. You thought you could walk away from this, but I'm not letting you. You wanted to keep your secrets, hide your lies, and play games. Well, now it's your turn to face the consequences." Her shoulders sagged and she sank to the couch, finally breaking down in tears. That moment I knew I had broken her. She was no longer the confident wife who thought she could manipulate her way out of anything. She was finally exposed and helpless. I stepped back, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd turned the tables, but I also knew this wasn't over. The damage was done, but there was still more to come. I had to make sure she understood she'd lost everything because of her lies. I told her, "This is just the start. You'll see what I have planned next, and trust me, you won't like it." I left her sitting there, her head in her hands, and went outside to breathe in the cool air, watching the waves crash and swirl. The whole morning felt surreal. I had finally done what I'd been dreaming about, destroying her carefully constructed facade. The truth was out, and I'd made sure she'd never forget it. As I looked at the ocean, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. No matter how angry or betrayed I felt, I knew I'd won this round. But I also knew I had to stay one step ahead. Because in this game of betrayal and revenge, the moment you let your guard down, everything falls apart. And I wasn't about to let her pick up the pieces. Not this time. Would you like me to continue with part 5? The days that followed were a whirlwind of chaos and quiet calculation. I kept a close watch on her, but I also worked on my next move. The emails had done their damage. Her reputation was shattered among her friends and family. That was good enough for me, but I knew her pride was still intact, and I wanted her to feel the pain of losing everything she'd held onto. While she was consumed with damage control among her social circle, I carefully orchestrated my next step. I contacted her so-called lover, the guy she'd been cheating with. I found his number in her phone, a contact I'd memorized from the evidence I had. I texted him, pretending I was someone else. I kept my tone cold and calculated. I told him I knew everything. The plans, the baby, the lies, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I warned him I was watching, that I'd make sure he paid in his own way if he kept sneaking around. Within hours, I received a reply. It was a message that sent a cold shiver down my spine. He seemed scared, defensive, almost begging me not to hurt him. I played along, making him think I was threatening to expose him too, but in reality I was just warming up. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. That night I took a different approach. I crafted a detailed plan. I figured out all her weak spots, her social ties, her reputation, her financial safety. My goal was clear: make her regret ever betraying me, make her feel powerless, humiliated, and broken. I decided to leak the messages and her ultrasound photo to her boss. I knew she worked in a small company where gossip spread fast. I found her boss's email and I sent an anonymous tip attaching everything. I made sure she'd get the message loud and clear. Her lies had reached the top. The boss, a stern woman, would not tolerate scandal. This could mean losing her job, her credibility, everything she'd built. I also contacted her parents directly, an anonymous call just enough to make them question their daughter. I told them I knew about the affair and the fake pregnancy. I told them I was done keeping quiet. I knew deep down this was the final blow. Her entire world, her carefully curated image, was about to crack open. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet, watching her reactions from a distance. Her phone kept buzzing with calls and messages. She was frantic, trying to deny everything, but the evidence was everywhere. Her world was crumbling brick by brick. I could see her slipping further into despair, her face pale, eyes darting around like a hunted animal. She finally confronted me one evening, her voice trembling. "You did all this," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You're ruining me." "Why?" I looked at her, cold and steady. "Because you lied, you cheated, and you thought you'd get away with it, but I'm not that guy. I don't forgive betrayal, not this deep, not after everything." She begged, of course. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to explain, to justify. "I was scared, okay? I didn't want to lose everything. The pregnancy, it's not even real. I was just trying to keep us together, but I messed up." Her voice cracked as she said it, desperately trying to cling to some hope that I'd forgive her, but I was done listening. I told her, "You lost your right to our life. I'll make sure you lose everything else too. You lied to me, to your family, to everyone, and now you're going to pay." I handed her a bag, told her to pack her things, and said, "You're leaving tonight, don't come back." She stared at me, defeated. Her face was raw, eyes red from crying. But I saw the flicker of something else, fear, anger, regret. It was too late for apologies now, I'd already won. I turned away and watched her walk out the door, her footsteps heavy and hesitant. That night as she drove away, I felt an odd mixture of satisfaction and hollow emptiness. I'd finally taken back control, but at what cost? The house was silent again, colder than before. I knew I'd have to rebuild somehow from the wreckage. The betrayal had shattered what we had, and I'd never forget the taste of it. The next morning, I went outside and looked out at the ocean. The waves still crashed relentlessly, just like my thoughts. I knew I'd done what I had to do. Her lies had sealed her fate. Now I was free, or so I told myself. But deep inside, I wondered, was I really done? Or was this just the beginning of something even darker? The revenge I'd crafted was only the first act. The real aftermath was still waiting to unfold. Would you like me to continue with the final part? The days turned into weeks, and I kept a close eye on everything. Her social media went dark soon after she left, which was fine by me. I didn't want her to have a platform to spin her story or to try to save face. I knew she was feeling the full weight of her choices, and honestly, I didn't care if she was suffering. That was her just desserts. I went through all her belongings, making sure she left nothing behind that could tie her back to me or our life together. I packed her things myself, her clothes, the jewelry, the little sentimental things she'd left behind. I handed her the keys to the house and told her to never come back. Watching her drive away for good, I finally felt the weight lift off my chest. I also took care of the legal part. I filed for divorce that very week. I wanted her to know I was serious about cutting ties. The papers were straightforward, no fuss, no drama, just a clean break. I handed everything over to a lawyer, signed the documents, and made it official. She would never have control over me again. In the end, I wanted her to see that her lies and betrayals had consequences. I wanted her to know she'd lost her life, the one she thought she could manipulate and control. I didn't seek revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted her to feel the cold, hard reality that her actions had set in motion. And she did. Looking back now, I realize I was angry, yes. But I was also determined. Betrayal like hers doesn't just hurt, it changes everything. It tests your limits, your sense of trust, even your own worth. I had to rebuild my sense of self from the ashes of her lies, and I did. What I learned from this, trust, is fragile. Once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. And revenge, it's a double-edged sword. It might give you temporary satisfaction, but ultimately the only real victory comes from letting go and moving forward. Because no matter how much you want her to feel the pain, the real power is in reclaiming your life and refusing to let her define your future. So, if you're ever in a situation where betrayal hits hard, remember this. Be calm, be strategic, and never forget your worth. Take back your power, cut out the toxicity, and never look back. Because the best revenge is never about making someone suffer. It's about proving to yourself that you're stronger than the pain they caused. I handed over the keys, closed that chapter, and walked away. And I'll tell you this, my life is better without her. The trust I lost will never come back, but I've learned to trust myself again, and that's the most important lesson of all.